back with the second part of the program. We are interviewing Nicolás Beriot. He's the Secretary General of the National Observatory on the Effects of Climate Change. We're going to talk now about the COP20 that we had here in Lima, and where almost 200 representatives of different nations got together to discuss maybe a treaty. I don't know, Nicolás, if you can explain us the objective of COP20, why it's so important?
Well, in 1992, the United Nations has decided to have a framework convention on climate change. So, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And since 1992, so then the nations meet to avoid the dangerous effects of climate change. So this is a political negotiation. It was decided so in 1992 for which reason? Because the science had given strong signals on the reality of climate change that started to be observed. And the information from scientists was that this would continue and could become dangerous. So the signal came in particular from the IPCC, the Intergubernamental Panel of Experts on Climate Change.
You could explain us a bit what is the objective of this organization?
Yes. The Intergubernamental Panel of Experts on Climate Change was created at the end of the 80s in order to have an international body of experts who would produce scientific assessment, and so that the United Nations could have a reference, a basis, a common and agreed scientific reference.
So they gathered the best scientists, experts on the subject, and so they could give their sound opinion. And the agreement was that it's impossible to deny it. We are indirectly modifying the climate in a way.
Yes, the experts that belong to the IPCC are experts that are proposed by the governments. And the report, the fifth report that was produced recently, involved more than 800 scientists from I think more than 100 countries, so that in fact there is this trust that can be given by the governments to the results of this international expertise. So the IPCC is organized in 3 working groups. The first working group is working on, I would say, the climate physics. The second working group is working on the impacts of climate change, the vulnerabilities to climate change, and the adaptation to climate change. And the third working group is working on the mitigation issues, so how to fight against the causes of climate change, what can be the technologies, what can be the economic trajectories, and so on.
You have to talk to scientists, and then you have to deliver the science to politicians and try to convince them.
United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was created in 1992, so it's the creation of this convention shows that the countries were decided to work on it. So since then, there is unanimity of countries to accept the conclusion of the IPCC and to work on a political level to fight against the causes of climate change and to adapt to climate change.
So what would be the next step? Because no treaty, no agreement has been yet signed. What are the expectations for the next meeting?
Right now, we had the COP20 in Lima, and Peru was president of this COP and will remain president along the next year. And at the end of next year, from the 30th of November to the 11th of December, the COP21 will be held in Paris. So on the 30th of November 2015, France will become president of the COP. So it means that along the next year, Peru and France will be in frequent contact.
Are you positive about these possible agreements in the future? And what do a good agreement would be? Maybe zero emissions in 10 years? What do you think?
What I can say objectively is that today the international community has understood that the climate policies are part of, I would say, broader policies that are related to some kind of ecological transition. So the climate policies have to be considered in a broader perspective of policies that will help the world to go to more sustainable ways of development. We have clearly understood is that the states and the governments have a number of responsibilities, and of course they are discussing, negotiating, expressing commitments. But the other components of the society are also very active and very involved, and more. So I mean that the private sector, the investors, financial investors, the individuals, the NGOs, and the local communities, the cities, the regions. So in these various sectors of the society, many initiatives are taken. A lot of information, a lot of knowledge circulates, among these various groups. So, this is quite independent of the states, and many initiatives are taken. So what we really observe since a few years, and maybe I would say particularly since Rio +20 in 2012, is there is this very wide mobilization of many groups and many people, many components of the civil society worldwide to contribute to this climate policies at their level.
I was just thinking about the process that Europe went through after the Second World War. You have the United Nations, that they got together to avoid having another war, and they pretty much succeeded. I mean, there's the chances of Europe having a war between the other countries is low. Maybe this climate change is the excuse we need to have a global economy, a global nation, or try at least to make all the countries work in one problem, and that could lead to very big things. What do you think?
My background is meteorology, so I worked as a meteorologist, and in fact, meteorology is about a fluid that is the atmosphere, very much about this fluid that is the atmosphere, and this fluid is common to the planet, and we breathe the same air, okay, and we share this same air. So this is straightforward what I'm saying, but when you look at history, you can see that meteorology is a sector where international cooperation has started very early, in the middle of the 19th century. In fact, there were two areas where some kind of world cooperation has started in the 19th century, and one of them was the telegraph, for evident reasons of compatibility of signals and so on, but the other one was meteorology. So it's true that doing meteorology and working on climate, this is working on these fluids that are the atmosphere and that are the ocean in particular, and that we share. So in fact, humanity is facing a common issue, and as you say, this is a good place, a good opportunity for us to realize that we share many commons and one planet, and we have only one.
Molecules do not have passports. They go from one place to another. They cross borders. the atmosphere is one system. You cannot split it in different parts. Just one last question. What do you think about the future of humanity? Do you think that is there still hope to turn around climate and having a future with no contamination and stable climate, maybe?
What I see is fantastic, I would say, mobilization, and the fact that the level of skills, the level of knowledge of many actors is increasing so much, so that I would say that all of us will become more clever in the sense that we see more and more the connections that each of us has with the natural environment. We better understand the connection of each our human activity with natural resources and climate system and the biosphere, and we become able to share what I observe week after week or day after day, in particular since 1 or 2 years. What I observe is a very high number of connections that exist between various groups around these topics. So as I very much involved in international things and meeting many people all year long, I can say that I see this. I see this movement, I see this connection, and I think that the mobilization is at its best today. I'm a scientist. I consider that there is, I would say, no limit to innovation. We have to continue research, fundamental research, applied research in many areas. And I mean, all is on the table for us to solve the issues. So
maybe there's a way to extract or to convert the CO2 of the atmosphere in the future. No? Maybe technology could stop this cataclysm. Thank you very much for coming, Nicolás. It was a pleasure to have you here in La Manzana. We were talking about climate change and the perspective of these international negotiations, and hopefully we could mitigate, not maybe stop, but mitigate the effects of climate change. My name is Víctor García Belaunde. This was another edition of La Manzana Prohibida, and hope to see you next time.